Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for the Copilot Finance and Supply Chain session. Today, we're going to focus on the new agent features that Microsoft has launched for the finance and supply chain product. I'm John Gutzman. I'm one of the team managers and the lead technical architect here at Stone Ridge Software. I focus on delivering finance and supply chain implementations.
My name is Mike Matthews. I'm the lead supply chain consultant here at Stone Ridge Software, focusing primarily on the advanced warehousing implementations for discrete and process manufacturers. Let's take a look at what we're planning on going over in this session today. So first, we're going to start off by just an overview of where Copilot is within the F&O product. From there, we're going to focus primarily on two agents. So looking at the supply chain communication agent and the account reconciliation agent. From there, we're going to look at the Copilot summaries across F&O as a whole, and then wrap up with our key takeaways and next steps. To take a look at the current state of finance and operations in Copilot, really there's three main areas that you want to take a look at. So the first one is going to be those embedded AI summaries. So that is primarily just a value add today where you might be looking at some records or some particular forms across the software, and it's going to give you a little bit of context or summary according to the particular record that you're selected on. So these are really just designed to give you a quick snapshot of what's going on with a particular record or some insight as to some risks or any suggestions associated with your current record. The second one is going to be those AI agents. So there's two primary agents. We're going to get into those here in a little bit, but really those agents are meant to act on data, not just summarize it. So those are focused on trying to provide high volume, exception driven processes and really focusing on trying to essentially speed up the efficiencies in those different areas. And then the last one is going to be that Copilot sidecar. So if you look at the bottom right of the screen, that's going to be that Copilot chat that you can bring open at any point in time and have those conversational help and explanations based on the page context. If you look at the overall breakdown here, right? So again, we're starting with those two agents. So the account reconciliation agent, which is really assisting with subledger and general ledger reconciliation, but it's also identifying differences, summarizing issues, and then supporting some resolutions for those issues. The supplier communication agent is really broken up into two different areas as well. So that's monitoring supplier email responses and then also automating those follow-ups with exception handling for purchase orders. There's over 10 embedded Copilot summaries available today. We're not going to touch on every single one, but the key thing here to note is that they're really grouped into three different categories. We have our finance summaries, our project operations, and our supply chain management ones.
All right, so the supplier communication agent is where we'll start. It encompasses basically two scenarios: vendor update requests and PO follow-ups. So we're going to walk you through the environment setup, how to configure these agents, and then we'll show you how to use both agents in the soft system. So quick summary of configuration and setup of the supplier communication agent. First, you need to be on version 10.44 or higher with the features enabled. These features still in preview currently. Then you need to publish the Copilot agents in Copilot Studio in the Power Platform and create an identity for the agents to use. The agents need their own licensing and security, although the user's security flows through when users are actually using the agents. Then you need to set up the connections in the Power Platform so that the agent can talk to finance and supply chain. And finally, you need to set up and synchronize the user's mailbox as well so that the email features can be used. Now I'm going to open up D365 and show you the supplier communication agent's PO follow-up functionality. Okay. In D365, in the procurement and sourcing menu, once you have these features enabled, you'll see a new submenu for the supplier communications agent. And we can just click on the follow-up emails here. And once you're in this form, you'll click this configure agents. And this takes you to the form where you can actually set up the agents. If this is your first time, you'll need to go to the library tab and select the agent that you want to set up. Since I've already configured one for this demo, I'm going to go back to the manage tab here, and I'm just going to come down here and click edit to show you the configuration. Oops, wrong one. Okay, so in the configuration, you can choose to create a draft or automatically send the email. You can choose to do this for delayed purchase orders or unconfirmed purchase orders. You can group these by purchase order or by vendor. You can customize the tone. You can choose which fields get displayed in your email. You can set the criteria that is used. And finally, you can specify the signature of the email. So the neat thing here is that you can actually set up multiple versions of this agent. So you could have one for delayed orders, you can have one for specific vendor groups that different folks run. And once you're done, we just click save, and the agents do need to be active in here. Now we'll go back here to the form. If you need to manually run it, you can click run here, but this one has already been run. It automatically creates a batch job behind the scenes that runs periodically. You can go to the batch jobs form and customize the interval that batch job runs at if you'd like it to run more frequently as well, or you can always come in here and click the run button. Once you've clicked run, it'll search for past due POs. You see here it's found one for Contoso agent or Contoso Asia. If we scroll down here, we see that it's created a draft email to Mike Matthews. Subjects filled in. It's included the fields and the signatures that we suggested. From here, you can say save, send, you can adjust it, or you can say ignore. And that concludes the follow-up email functionality.
All right, so next we're going to take a look at the purchase order updates from vendors. So I'm going to share my screen. And similarly to the purchase order follow-ups, we're going to take a look at this agent. I just want to take a quick pause though. So what is this purchase order updates from vendors, right? Like what's the primary focus here? Really what this agent is going to do is it's going to monitor an email box, and it's going to look for any updates that it can find, emails being sent into this email box, that it can take that data and provide an update or a suggestion within F&O. So if we take a look at this agent, the first way that we're going to navigate to it is going to be going to our agents form. So within our module, we'll select that agent module and then select agents. And then the one that we're going to focus on here is going to be the purchase order updates from vendors with supplier communication agents. So in here, I have one that's already configured. So again, by default, you're going to be in that manage tab. If you have not configured an agent yet, you'll go to that library view. And then in here, what you're going to do is select that speed up updates in purchase orders with the supplier communications agent. So what you do is you'd select this one. And then in here, you can provide a title. Again, you have the ability to filter on the vendor. So if you want to use a particular vendor group for this, or if you want to use any vendor, that default will work for you. And then what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to ensure that the email address is set up and available for review via Power Platform configurations. So we'll provide a QR code at a point in time during this presentation for you to see all the requirements for getting that configured. But essentially, F&O needs to have access to that email box to monitor it for any supplier updates. So again, you would define the email address that you would like to look for those changes in and then activate it from there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and I'm going to click no. So I'm not going to create this new agent, but I am going to look at the one that I already have configured. So by time you have one configured, you can always use this manage tab to enable or disable the agent itself using that toggle. It's going to give you an overview of what that reoccurring batch job is going to look like. And then if you expand, you'll be able to see who created it. You can delete if needed or edit. When you look at the edit here, what we're going to see is I've created one that is just monitoring my sandbox email. So when any vendor sends an update to my sandbox email address, it's going to show me a summary of the changes. Anytime that you make changes, though, you'd want to click save here. Because I've clicked no changes, I'm just going to click that back button. So that's the configuration for this agent, what it looks like in practice. So again, we're going to navigate to our modules. We're going to go down to procurement and sourcing. And then under the preview, supplier communications agent, we are going to see the emails from vendors. So again, how this works is anytime that an email goes into this inbox that's being monitored, it's looking for updates that are particular to purchase orders within F&O. So once one comes in, we'll be able to see that it's going to create two different data areas. So we're going to have our summary, which is going to provide us information with the purchase order and purchase order lines that it thinks are applicable to the email. And then we'll have the email tab where it's going to show us the original email that was sent in for this update. You have the ability to apply all suggestions, make corrections to the suggestions, or ignore them. If you want to review any reviewed emails or emails that essentially you've looked at, you haven't acted on or made suggestions to, you can click this reviewed emails button and it's going to take you to that list there. So if you want any historical data behind emails or suggestions that were given out, you can view that as well. To go back, so this is our current list in here. So what you'll see is for this particular one, it looks like a email was sent in for a supply issue saying that we were unable to, or the vendor was unable to provide us with one of the items that's being purchased on a particular purchase order, but they note that they'll be shipping all other items on the purchase order. So what you'll see here is D365 or the supply chain communication agent was able to find the affected purchase order. And then it's also showing us that this line number is having a change to it, right? So that rejection is detected. So it's saying that we're going to essentially cancel that purchase order line. And by default, you're going to see that it's showing only lines with changes. So if you wanted to see that whole purchase order, what you could do is you could set that toggle to no, and you'd be able to see all the purchase order lines applied to it. But what you're going to inherently want to see is all the changes that it's suggesting. So if you were to go in here and select apply to all your suggestions, what it's going to do is it's showing you the purchase order header is going to stay the same. So it's still going to remain in that approved confirmed status. The date remains the same and it's still an open order. The only change that we see here is on our current line that it's going to cancel it, right? So anytime that you want to see the change that Copilot's going to be making here, the agent's going to be making, you're going to want to look for those bold words because that's going to tell you exactly what's going to happen. So in here, if you want to accept or apply the suggestion, what you do is apply all and then select yes. That's going to go and make the applied change to the purchase order itself. And then you're going to see that's actually going to drop from our current queue that would need to be processed. While we're waiting for that, I want to tee up our next example. Oh, it looks like in here, this is a good example of what could happen. So at this point in time, it looks like a vendor sent an update by time that we've actually received or registered in some of this product, right? So one of the important things you want to note here is if those transactions have started within F&O, this is an area where you'd want to make sure that either the right purchase order has been received if you're getting vendor updates, or make sure that you're making those correct changes based on the vendor's communication. Let's tee up another example here. So I have an email. So starting from scratch, right? So how this works, an email is essentially going to be sent in showing us that due to supply issues, we're no longer going to be able to provide this particular order. So if we send in that email, similar to the other agent that John just talked about, there's that batch job that runs in the background. The only difference with this one is you don't have the ability to go in and run it manually. So you would have to monitor the batch job occurrence or the timing within that batch job's form before being able to essentially manually manipulate that. So in here, the only thing that you have to do is wait for that refresh. So as you're currently waiting for more of those to come in, you could continue to refresh, or you could continue to essentially work through other ones. One thing that is important is when an email is found or an email comes in and we're unable to identify maybe an item or a purchase order. You'll see in this example, They just provided us with the item description, but not the item itself or the line number or anything that was able to clue Copilot in or the agent into what particular line was affected. You'll see that it identifies the purchase order, but it doesn't identify the line. So that's a good example of where you would set this toggle to no. It's going to show you all the lines, and then in here, you can make your independent edits and apply those changes. Let's refresh. Our batch job should have kicked off by now. We can take a look at it, certainly. So if we want to look for our batch job in here, we're going to go to our batch jobs form. And our description is looking for those updates in the procurement and sourcing. Vendor updates. So in here, maybe I have space in there. Let's take a look. So under our configure agent, it looks like our batch job is not set, or I have the wrong name here. Everything looks good there. Let's clear this out. There we go. So looking for our speed up updates. Looks like this is still in waiting status and should be running anytime now. So let's go back to our supplier communication and do a refresh. And there we go. So it just ran through. So in this example, we can see that it's identified that we're not going to be able to, this one is running through. So it calls out one particular line that we are not going to be able to provide, and then all other ones will be provided. So in this example, if you take a look here, any of the lines that are essentially not going to be affected are going to show up when we have that is, or not going to show up when we have it set to yes. So it's just going to show us the affected one. Otherwise, if we change that toggle from the default, it's going to show us all the lines in that order. So that is essentially how the purchase order updates from vendors works within the Supplier communication agent. All right.
All right, next on the list is the account reconciliation agent. The account reconciliation is used to find mismatches between the subledgers and the GL. And its purpose is to surface what needs attention so you don't have to go digging through all kinds of data to find the transactions that need your attention. It searches for exceptions and has built-in built-in traceability and monitoring. So similar to the supplier communication agent, there's some setup that has to be configured before you're ready to use it. You need to be on 10.44 later again, and you need to have the agent identity and security set up just like before. This particular agent has 3 agents that need to be published in Copilot Studio. And again, the connectors need to be set up. And then finally, you need to enable the agents within D365.
All right, so we're going to go over to F&O and take a look here at the account reconciliation agent. So starting back at our previous screen, I'm going to go back to the finance and operations page. For configuration of this agent, it looks a little bit different. So our last 2 agents that we took a look at, you can really configure them per either vendor or there's multiple configuration options. What we'll see that's going to be different here is our account reconciliation agent is really just defined in as one activation or one agent activation. So if we go in here, what is going to look a little bit different is if you've already identified or created the account reconciliation agent, if you go to the library tab, you're not going to see it there as an agent that can be configured, right? It's only going to show up in the manage tab. So this is a one-time configuration, and it is across the board for all configured legal entities, accounts, etc. So we'll go in and define how we can identify the particular accounts and legal entities that we want the reconciliation agent looking at. So under the Manage tab, we'll see that we have this enabled. Again, if you want to disable it, you just change that toggle. We're going to click the Edit button. And what that's going to do is it's going to bring us to this page, right? So we can essentially define when do we want this agent starting to look at the transactions for. So this one is set for 12/1 of 2024, essentially just noting that from the time that you want to start looking at these reconciliation exceptions or open exceptions, this would be the date that it would be effective for. And then underneath that, you'll see the account reconciliation configuration. So based on your posting profiles, it is automatically going to bring in some of these accounts. So I'm going to collapse these windows right now, and we're going to take a look. So really, this is built off of 4 main areas. We have our accounts payable, accounts receivable, bank, and tax. So for each of these subsections, you can go in and you can define different accounts and legal entities that you want it to look for as far as the reconciliation recommendations. So in here, that's going to bring in those default ones based on your posting profiles, but you can come in and you can add or remove counts respectively. So if you want to limit what you're seeing those reconciliation suggestions for, you can certainly come in and do that. And that is per area, right? So if you want to do it for AR, AP, bank, or tax. Once you configure all of that, what you're going to do is this agent is actually viewed a little bit differently than our last ones. So our last ones had forms. This one is primarily based in a workspace. So if you're at your F&O home screen, you're going to see this account reconciliation workspace. Within this workspace, it's built up in 5 main areas. So we have an overview of our open exceptions. We can see our addressed exceptions. So we can see how we're handling these exceptions that our agent's identifying. It's going to give us a total count of our reconciled transactions. We're able to see our suggestions offered overview. Today, we're going to focus primarily on these addressed exceptions, but if you want to learn more about those reconciliation suggestions, reach out to one of the Stoneridge folks. We'll be happy to walk you through what those can look like. So below is the main area. You're going to see an overview or status of those exceptions. It is broken up by company as well. So if you have this running across multiple legal entities, you'll be able to see the number of exceptions for each. To address them, you can click on the particular area with the exception tag, or you can select the mitigate exceptions, and that's going to open up an area. Really, what Copilot is valuing or adding here is it's telling you what it thinks the issue is, right? So for the majority of these, we see a scenario where we have something in the ledger, but not in the subledger, or vice versa, right? So it's giving you the visibility as to the voucher or the transaction that's created this potential issue. It's going to give you an activity overview. So anytime that a reversal or anything has changed or a reconciliation failed, it's going to let you know what that activity is. But it's also going to give you the ability to make a change to it, right? So you can accept it without a change. You can maybe go in and create a journal entry, or you can do a reversal right from here. If you go back, you can run through the different ones. Obviously, you'll be able to see the different areas, again, focusing on those 4 main areas. And then you can also go back and view the historical data there, right? So you can view addressed exceptions, and it'll run through, and you'll be able to see the action that was taken from each one. If you want to look at transactions during different periods, so you'll always see that at the top you have this query. So you can come in here and you can define different fiscal periods that you want to view these exceptions for. So you can select different ones, and then by selecting OK down here, you'll change it. You can also view this by particular companies as well, right? So if you want to change the company that you're viewing it for, or change the scope of the areas, you can use that as well. So at a high level, that's essentially how the account reconciliation agent works. We're going to jump over now and talk about Copilot summaries. So our Copilot summaries, first starting off with what are these summaries, right? So these are really just context-aware AI-generated summaries that are particular to particular pages. Really, these are focusing on giving us a little insight to the status, risks, exceptions, or even recent activity associated with the record, right? So this is really just to be able to provide us with a high-level overview of a particular record, so we can get caught up to speed with any changes that might have happened with it before the last time that we've seen it, or since the last time we've seen it. As far as requirements, so you have to be on the 10.0.44. Copilot features must be enabled in feature management. If you want to see the summaries within the warehouse mobile app, that's a little bit of a different configuration. So you just have to be on that warehouse management app 10.0.38 or later as far as finance operations. And then the app version is the 2.3.2 or later. And again, within the app itself, you need to have that context aware worker summary screen feature enabled. To see what the summaries are in action, so at the bottom, we have just an overview of what that might look like, right? So most summaries are going to be broken up into two different areas. You're going to have your status, and then you're going to have your insights, right? The insights is really going to give you a good idea of what it's thinking is going to happen or the risks that are associated with this particular record, while the status is just going to give more of a data-driven overview. It might say how many number of lines there are, or if there are lines that aren't received or in a particular status, et cetera. So it's going to focus a little more on the status of the order and the data behind it, whereas the insights are going to be more identifying that risk, et cetera. So if you look at the four different areas here, right? So we have cross-application summaries. So this is very common in like workflow history. So if you're looking at the workflow history, it can run you through an overview of what's happened for a particular record. So sometimes those workflow histories can get a little lengthy. So you'll see that the summary there can help you out in getting a good understanding of what's going on. And then again, you see it run down for the finance folks, project operations, and supply chain management. So these are just a list of areas where you can go, and within those particular record forms, you'll be able to see the summaries.
All right. So the key takeaways and next steps. So we've shared some QR codes here. The account reconciliation agent and the supply chain communication agent, these links will take you to the Microsoft documentation where it walks through all of the details on how to configure and set these up. And then the third QR code here is the contact Stoneridge. If you need any help going through those, some more guidance on how to enable them, just reach out and we'd be happy to help you. Thank you for your time today and happy co-piloting.
Thanks, everyone.